So why don't we start off by talking about the one shot that we played today? We had a load of fun playing the game. In 2.5 hours, we managed to create characters very quickly. One of the players said it was the fastest they'd ever managed to make a character. And we managed to run a 5 encounter game in probably about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I really, as the GM, I got the feel that I could have very easily have made that be 3 encounters for someone who was getting bored, or longer for people who were really invested. Um, it was really fun to play. Everyone was really into it. Did you design it to be that way, or is this a happy coincidence?
I mean, it it probably through like an evolutionary process of minor changes over time got to be like that. Um, the dueling dice mechanic definitely helped speed things up a little bit and make people feel like they're always involved even when they're not on their turn. So a couple other things like minimizing the scale of the attributes and stuff like that definitely helped kind of keep the pace going. So I think it's a bit of both, a little
Yeah,
bit of happy accident versus a little bit of tweaks and changes.
yeah, through experimentation, beautiful. I mean, like you mentioned earlier when you was in the chat about it's funny how adults always play kids and kids always play adults, and I think that was really nice. I really enjoyed seeing how wholesome it was when everyone was going back to like, their memories of being kids and stuff, and it was so much fun to play.
Yeah, and at, even at a table, at a single table where I had two kids playing with two adults, I had the kids playing much older roles, and I had the adults playing much younger roles, and they kind of met in the middle, so it wasn't like too super awkward. But the
Mhm.
kids were playing teenagers, and like the two adults that were at the table were playing like tweens or so, and again, everybody just had fun. And I heard that from a guy named Jason Walters at IPR. He said that he's had trouble selling books designed for kids in the past, primarily because a lot of kids don't want to play as kids. And I'm like, well, that's okay because in the game you don't even have to play like a kid. You don't have to play a human. Like the because there's no like specific thing that says this is where you got your power from. Uh, you could be a robot. You could be an alien. You could be like right now in my Sunday night game. Uh, one of my characters is an 8 foot tall giraffe girl. So I mean, like, it just comes out of anywhere.
It's really interesting that you say that as well, because we all sort of came in, I think, with ideas of the sort of thing we wanted to be. Like, I know one of the characters wanted to do something with time, and another one wanted to do something to do with dinosaurs, and we all just led in, and maybe because we're all adults, we just went straight into being kids. But people, they really felt a lot of agency with the character creation method. They felt that the model was simple enough that you could be really complex with your artistic flair on the character. You could
Right.
really, design it the way you wanted, which was so much fun to play. So much fun.
Fantastic. It worked out exactly the way I liked it. And for kids, a lot of the character really fun part of it. So like you can take your time about it too, and you can make like you can drop like you can create like what kids have probably created between the two of them. They've probably created about six or so characters already. Just but like they've like committed to them. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean it's just a fun quick thing to do. And
Yeah.
like even like other games that we play, we typically get to the point where you're doing the character creation, and then we get up to that point, and then I was like, okay, we might play like one or two sessions before we like peter out. But it's that character creation session that's always just kind of a blast. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that it worked out for you.
Already infecting the kids with the making characters that they may never play syndrome.
That's happened quite a few times. Yeah. Um, we just recently played story. We recently started playing Tales from the Loop, and my daughters picked up. They one played the popular kid, and the other one played the rocker, and they asked me to play a character too. So I picked the nerd. So now it's the way that we described their relationship is like they have a secret friendship that they don't share with others. So like they have this intricate, complex relationship with each other, and then when it comes to me, it's like, oh yeah, you're just a nerd that we kind of force into doing what we want to do. Like that sounds about like my current existence. So yeah, that works.
Yeah. Oh wow. um, so at the moment you are currently on your Kickstarter campaign. So how much have you got to raise at the moment? It's like what, you're over 75% now, like 85%.
I'm at, last I checked, 86%. So
86%. 86%. That's incredible.
yeah,
And can you give us a brief overview of what the money's going towards? Obviously, the system was so much fun to play.
nice.
How are you going to be using it?
Well, majority of it, and I'd say everything with the exception of the amounts that I need to be able to actually physically print and ship books, is going directly to art and design. So I believe, oh, sorry, art design and editing.
Hmm.
I believe I have a pretty good base for a book. So really, at this point, it's just about getting a lot of the finer tuned cleanup, getting the basically getting the book to the point where it actually stands out on a shelf, or it actually stands out amongst several other stacks of books and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I've been working with literally just two pieces of art for villains, for the most part. I've got some minor henchmen drawn up, but I only have 2 out of my 10 villains. I only have 2 out of my 10 superheroes. Um, I'm I'm trying to definitely get away from any kind of stock footage. I think I might have like one piece of stock footage in there now at
Hmm.
this point, but in general, I just want to get everything like cleaned up and make it unique to Power Outage, and like even from a design element, when Rosanna took over doing, like she wanted to create an example of the design changes. She took over doing the character page, and immediately she's like, the design that you see at the end looks like a blueprint. And she's like, well, yeah, I kind of like the idea that you're building a character so much like that. Like even like these like small designer elements that add like just this like nuance to the pages. Like mine just looked like, you know, early 2000s front page square blocks on a white background kind of
Hmm.
deal. She designed something that's like far superior aesthetically. So that's everything is going towards that.
Yeah, yeah,
Really, just making a book that's worth spending money on.
yeah. And of course, imagery and pictures are pretty synonymous with like pitching to a younger audience as well. Like not only just for those that enjoy pictures, but for maybe those young enough to not be able to read. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you can really start pitching this game as soon as a child's able to pick up a plot, right? There's no bottom limit really.
Yeah, it really. I started playing the game with my daughters initially, so they kept stealing my dice. So I had to come up with a game to play with those dice. And I started looking around a little bit at the time, but at the time I didn't have much experience with RPGs in general. Um, I mean, sorry, tabletop RPGs in general.
Mhm.
Uh, so I started designing my own, um, and I needed to be able to play with my 4-year-old, and at the time my 4-year-old couldn't read. So a big part about the design is the concept of differentiation, and that's like bigger in education, I think, than in gaming, especially
Mhm.
in gaming groups. But the idea is that you don't necessarily have to have everybody playing by the same rules. You
Mhm.
just have to have everybody playing the same game. So the differentiation allows you to play with a 4-year-old and provide her more attention than the 6-year-old,
Mhm.
and still have the same amount of input coming in from each kid. So with my 4-year-old, she was picking images off of cards and just describing what she wanted to do, not necessarily worrying about the the mechanics or the mathematics involved in her decisions. She wasn't like strategizing. She just wanted to do something cool. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
she wanted to pull out an ice sword, you know, or turn into a princess or a ninja or whatever she was choosing to do. My older daughter, who was 6 at the time, she had, you know, she was already reading, already doing a lot of things like that. She was strategizing. She was full on like min maxing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
How
so
quickly they earn.
so yeah, I think the earliest you can, if you have gotten to the point where you're sitting at the tea party table with a tiny cup of tea and pretending you're an earl or a duke or you know you're playing pirates or something like that, you've already started playing the game.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? The only difference is that you're playing the game without any structure, and this just kind of provides a setting. So at the earliest ages, all you're doing is providing a setting and providing a concept that they're going to formalize their ideas around. And then as they get older, you're developing more and more, like the math starts feeding into them. You know what I mean? And like the construction of the character, the construction of the story, the construction of the elements becomes more and more complex, so that you can play the same game with adults
Yeah, yeah. So
and not worry. Yeah,
it's almost literally like you're capturing the imagination and giving it form or structure, sort of.
yeah. And I'm not taking credit for that because I think that's what RPGs does in general.
Of
I mean,
course, yeah.
yeah, they do it. Like all I'm doing is borrowing from like the genre itself. Um, the only trick is that I'm doing away with the idea of like a dogmatic requirement to follow the rules. Everything that I describe within the book is considered guidance.
Hmm.
Even the powers themselves are supposed to be considered as guidance to what powers you can pick, not necessarily this is what you're limited to. You can only choose this. So
Hmm.
if you wanted to create a power or you wanted to combine powers, there's actually guide, you know, I tell you right in the book, do so, you know. And if you found a power that's cool enough, I created a website that you could submit the power so that way they're, you know, canonical to the rest of the, you know, so that everybody else can enjoy them too.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah, absolutely awesome. Okay, so you're very close to your goal, 86%. Well done, congratulations. Uh, what happens when you get 100%? What happens then next?
well, let's see here. If I get 100% earlier than my goal, I start shooting for my stretch goals.
Hmm.
Um, as soon as I get funded, what my plan was to actually send everybody that was involved with the Kickstarter a copy, my dev copy, the same copy that I sent to you and your
Hmm.
friends, although with maybe a little bit more, you know, proofreading.
Yeah.
I want everybody to get their hands on everybody that contributed. I want them to get their hands on the game. I
Mhm.
want them to start seeing that they could play it. And what the most important thing is, I want them to see how their contribution has made the leaps and bounds towards the final product.
Mm.
So that's the first step that I'm going to do. Next, it's going to be going into working hand in hand with my designer and artist to, you know, flush out the book, get each component of it done. I need to buy an ISBN number for the book, which shouldn't be too bad. And the other side of it is, while they are focusing on design and artwork, I'm going to be jumping back towards a site that I started building when I started working on the book called accessible-rpg.com.
Mhm.
So that's basically a website that provides accessibility guidance for people with disabilities. And right now, as it stands, the site is just a framework. It's not where I want it to end, it's just where I want it to begin. And right now, it has a lot of guidance specifically geared towards children
Mm.
with disabilities. What I want to do is I want to expand um, the offerings from that site, expand the knowledge, and continue outreach towards the the disabled community, because it's an open wiki, so that if you have firsthand knowledge
Mhm.
about these things, then your input is the most important thing. I don't think any site that I can create that I would solely populate would effectively support the community, because I'll always have limited insight into what people need. So I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. And because it needs to be a collaborative effort, it can't be attached to any single product. So
Mhm.
I want it to be a resource that's not just available to me for my game, but for anybody that's developing a game, for anybody that's running a GM table, for anybody that is running a store and creating a space that they want people to be able to come to. For anybody that's running a session at a convention or thinking about starting up a convention, um, and that's important to me.
Mhm.
And I want there to be more to that site by the time the book is released.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, there's stretch goals. If I can work, if I hit my stretch goals, then I'm going to be doing some other work too. Like as it is right now, one of my rewards that I got yesterday, which was like mind blowing, was that somebody contributed at the $1,000 reward level.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I can't believe that. So his reward is that he gets a unique adventure drawn up for him. So I guess I'm going to be spending a little bit of time working with him too on developing his adventure.
Mhm.
Um, the stretch goals, each stretch goal includes basically one adventure and one new hero. So the way that it'll work is when we hit a stretch, if we hit a stretch goal, or I'll say when we hit a stretch goal, um, I'll work on an adventure in a new region, and that will be made available to everybody that has contributed, either digitally to everybody who's digital, maybe in a paper copy to everybody that's done physical. Although it won't be like maybe it'll be like a soft cover or something,
Mhm.
because they're usually smaller in size. Um, and it'll also include one pre-generated hero. And that pre-generated hero, just like Shieldster or Suburbanite or some of the other pre-generated heroes I created,
Mhm.
um, that'll be available as a unique hero specific to the adventure that you can choose to either use as an NPC that goes along with the kids, or the kids can choose to play that character if they so choose. So each stretch goal unlocks an additional adventure and an additional hero.
That's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Um, yeah, it's like I say earlier with the adventure I was running as well. I love the way the mechanics, especially. I think you've really hit the nail on the head with that opposing dice combat. Because I didn't use it at first. I misunderstood. Maybe I've played too much D&D, and I was giving things a DC, and then I sort of read it again, and I was like, oh no, hang on a minute, that's where the Oma comes in. That's why I'm not using Oma. And as soon as we started using that, immediately the game got more interesting, like just
Nice.
straight away. It was really nice mechanic actually.
Yeah, somebody once told me that as soon as they learn what score they have to roll against to defeat an enemy, the enemy stops to becoming an enemy and starts becoming just a number.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like the most boring thing in the world to me. So I wanted to try to avoid that, and I want to try to like make a mechanic. And also, when you're playing with kids and it's not their turn, like that's got to be like a letdown. You know what I mean? Like there's just waiting and waiting and waiting. So I wanted something that engages them into each combat. So whenever I'm rolling, you're also rolling. Whenever you're rolling, I'm rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but of course, you also have other activities that you could do with kids. Doodling, drawing the characters, drawing like the character sheet as it is now has a much bigger drawing section,
Mm-hmm.
so
One
that
of
kids can draw.
one of the players today was doodling their character in it. Like 100% nostalgia. It worked. Yeah, give them the space, and there it goes.
Fantastic. Yep, there you go. That's the goal. And that's actually my daughter's idea. I completely stole that from her. A lot of them I stole from them. I'll be honest.
Hey, that's when you're pitching to a demographic, I suppose we better to ask. So, would you want to talk about accessibility in the gaming industry for a little bit? We sort of touched on it with the website, but I know this is something you're passionate about.
Yeah, I work in public education, and again, I could talk about family members that have disabilities. I could talk about friends and relationships that have disabilities, but in general, you shouldn't have to necessarily have an attachment to a person that has a disability to understand that when you go to a game and you start playing it and you start getting the feeling that you get when you play an RPG, like this immersion, this feeling of camaraderie with your fellow players, the creativity that flows through you, the release that you get from your troubles for 4 hours at a time. Like when you think about that and think that people could potentially be restricted from that kind of enjoyment, it almost becomes an imperative that you have to do what you can to make sure that everybody gets access to that sort of environment.
Mhm.
And when I first started seeing the things that you guys were doing, like with the veils and things like that, and when I first went to a convention and they used that X button and stuff like that was just eye opening to me. Um, so what I did within Power Outage was the way that I approached it was actually in the same way that I approached the powers. So in powers and Power Outage, I give you the effects of the power, and then the kid supplies the flavor text or the cause. So the cause is generated, and I provide you the effect. In the same way, that's kind of how I approached accessibility
Mhm.
within Power Outage. So what I did was I originally took the 13 classifications that occur in public education for special education in New Jersey. And I broke down basically everything that qualifies you for that classification. And then from there, I took each one of those things and I broke down what are the conditions that that what are the symptoms basically of each condition. And then when I saw that, I saw that the symptoms started repeating over and over again. So within the book, and hopefully within the site, on the site that I created, I provide guidance for the effect, right? I provide guidance for the symptomatic approach rather than the cause of the thing. So whether you are suffering from things like anxiety or depression, or from lack of attention or focus, or from sensitivity to light or sensitivity to whether whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
um, you, whatever is causing that, I'm helping to treat the effect itself, not the cause. And I understand that I'm missing. I'll probably be missing out on some of the connective tissue that that leads to that effect. I found that this was probably the best attempt that I could come up with to give kind of broad yet simple coverage across the board, so that people are coming to the table more knowledgeable.
Mhm.
So yeah, I broke it up into uh, uh, um, behavioral, uh, cognitive, emotional, communicative and receptive, and physical domains.
Mhm.
And again, I try to provide a little bit of guidance on each. And I think, again, there's people that are out there that are doing brilliant things with with information. I think the most recent thing I discovered was Meeples Like Us. based out of the UK, actually, I think, based out of the UK.
Mhm.
They basically are doing the same thing I'm doing. So, and they're probably far ahead. So, I mean, like, I'm happy to say, look at their resources by all means. If I could keep on doing what I'm doing, and then eventually provide more information to them, whatever the case may be, so be it. But I think it behooves us to all have a little bit more understanding about um, what accessibility guidance means when it comes to the gaming table, especially if you are a person that is going to be gaming outside of a private environment.